So in this model, we have three driver variables here, which show the percentage uplift for our top, average, and poor performing employees. We can see the result of these variables here ends up in a projected compensation cost of 883 million. If I change the values in these drivers up here, it also changes the result cell down here. Now that's nice, but what if we have a very specific budget in mind that we need to keep to, and we want to get the projected compensation cost to reflect that amount? Instead of coming over here and manually adjusting each of these variables until the number looked about right, what we can do instead is use a number of tools built into Excel under the what if analysis section to enable us to run different scenarios and automatically solve for values within a number of different constraints. So the first tool that we can use under data, what if analysis, is called GoalSeek. So GoalSeek is probably the simplest of our options here. What it enables us to do is to set a cell. In this case, we're going to select our result cell over here to some sort of budget. Let's call this 850 million. By changing the cells up here, I'm going to click OK. And we can see here that this goes to a negative value. Now this is not what we want. I mean, obviously we don't want to be paying our top performance even less than they're earning now. So that is not the desired result. So what we really want to do is, first of all, we want to add some sort of criteria to floor this variable at 0, so it can't go below 0. The other thing that we really want to do is we want to be able to alter all three of these variables to come to our projected compensation cost. To do that, we are going to use an option called Solver. Now, I have Solver up here under the Analyze section of Excel. Now, it's important to keep in mind that Solver is actually technically an add-in. Now, it is actually included with Excel, and all you have to do is enable it by ticking a little tick box under the add-ins section. Now, the easiest, quickest way to get to the add-ins is using a shortcut key, Alt-T-I. Now, anytime you use a shortcut key in Excel that starts with Alt, it is not all together like you would normally do with a control key. It is a sequence. So first pressing the button Alt, and then T, and then I, one at a time in sequence. So that brings us to the add-ins window here, where we have a tick box under Solver. If you don't have that ticked, go ahead and tick that now, and click OK to make Solver appear in your toolbar. So now that we have Solver in place, we can go ahead and click on that. And what we notice here is in the first box, we have set objective. So this is going to be similar to GoalSeek. We're going to come over to here, and we are going to click on our result cell. And we have a number of different options here. So we can set it to a maximum, a minimum, or a value of. So over here, I'm going to punch in the value for a certain scenario. Let's say we have a good year to pay everybody. So let's put in a budget of 950 million. By changing, and this time instead of selecting one value, we can actually select multiple values. So let's select all of these values here. Now you notice here that you can also add a number of constraints to all of our variables. Now we already have a tick box over here. So this one here, tick make unconstrained variables non-negative. This will effectively floor all of our variables at 0, so they cannot go below 0. But we can also add some additional constraints as well. So if I click on Add, let's say that our top performers, we never want to pay them more than a 20% uplift. I'm going to add that. Our average performers, we want to make sure that their uplift is not more than the top performers by at least 2%. Let's add an additional constraint. We also want to make sure that we always pay our average performers a minimum of 5%. And let's add one more criteria here. For the poor performers, we also want to make sure that their uplift is always less than the average performers by at least 2% as well. So that is all done now. I've set up all those. I can click OK. And you can see all the constraints that I've set up here under Solver. You notice here that they have names as well. So average, average, poor, top. These names come from the named ranges that we set up earlier. Another really nice benefit of using named ranges. So I'm going to come over here and click Solve. That goes away. And it has entered all these figures to bring us to 950 million. Okay, fantastic. That looks great. Now there's a button over here called Save Scenario. So let's go ahead and save that. So I'm going to click Save. And this is effectively what happens if we have a good year. So let me call the name of our scenario Good Year. I'm going to click OK. And let's keep those results. Let's run a second scenario. So let me go back to Solver again. Let's say this time we have a bad year. So instead of having 950 million to spend, we only have 850 million. So I'm going to click Solve. It's adjusted all of our values again here to bring us in just under 850 million. I'm going to save this scenario and we're going to call this bad year. And click OK. Let's keep those results. So now that we have a couple of different scenarios, how do we actually review and get back to those scenarios? Under the What If Analysis button, we have Scenario Manager. So here you can see we have our good year and bad year scenarios. The nice thing about this is that if I double click on these, it repopulates all of these variables. So if you have multiple variables that you're needing to update, then this can be a nice way of basically saving them all. So we've got all the variables and our projected compensation cost of 950 million. Click on the bad year and it takes us back to those results. Now let's say I wanted some sort of report which basically shows the results of all of these different scenarios together so that we can look at them side by side. If I click on the summary button over here, this creates us a report. The result cell is this value over here. I'm going to click OK. And there we have our report. Now at the moment, we've got nice names up here because we used name ranges, but the result cell, we still have E9. Now to make this look better, I can basically just come back over to my input sheet. I can select these values and set these up as name ranges. So the shortcut key for that is Control-Shift-F3. So left column, OK. Let's come back to What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. And let's just run that report again. And there we have our report again with a pretty name. So some really powerful features if you are doing any modeling in Excel. I hope you found this lecture useful, and I will see you in the next lecture.